One. All right, this is a first here on the HBCU Grad Podcast. We have a graduate class on the podcast. And I want to start with Dr. John Gallagher, and I want you to briefly introduce yourself and then the class, and then we'll go around and have everyone introduce themselves, where they're from, a quick educational background, and then why you chose social work and HBCU and Morgan State University. So we'll start with you, Dr. Gallagher.
Excellent. And Todd, thank you so much for having my students and I here on the podcast. We're so happy to be here. This class is part of the MSW, the Master of Social Work program at Morgan State University. And it is the juvenile justice class, where we talk about a variety of issues related to the role of social work and social workers in reforming the juvenile justice system to help our youth and help our communities. And within this class, we are doing a service learning project. And service learning is a type of teaching that involves students, such as the four that we have here, doing a project. And the project in this situation is a training that we're going to be doing on Monday, April 24th, doing a project that gives back to the community. So specifically, we're doing on Monday, April 24th, from 5:30 p.m. to about 8:45 p.m., we're doing a training in collaboration with NASW, which is the National Association of Social Workers, the Maryland chapter. And the training is titled Juvenile Justice Reform Through a Compassionate and Empathetic Lens, a paradigm shift from what's wrong with the child to what has happened to the child. And it is a wonderful event. 100% of the profits are going to be donated to the Children's Home, which is located near Baltimore, Maryland. And the Children's Home is a great resource in our community that helps youth and families who have been impacted by a variety of issues, such as mental health disorders, addictions, trauma, and a variety of other issues. But the last point I make, and before we move into the student introductions, is this event is evolving. Number one, we're here on the podcast and so grateful to be here with you, Todd, to talk about it. Number two, we have Brooke Seam. She is a national mental health advocate, an author of a recent book titled May Cause Side Effects. It talks about potential withdrawal symptoms from antidepressant medication. And she also was on the Food Network show called Chopped. And so she was a reality TV star, and she actually won the Chopped Championship on this Food Network show. And then next, we recently found out that Dr. Jerome Adams, he is the 20th Surgeon General of the United States, has agreed to provide opening remarks to our presentation. So we invite any and everyone to attend this presentation. Surely social workers who are working in juvenile justice reform, this would be appropriate for them, but anyone who wants to learn, community members, your podcast listeners, anyone who wants to learn about modern contemporary issues related to juvenile justice reform, we invite you to attend. And again, all the profits are going to be donated to the Children's Home. Now, with that said, we have, celebrities, high-profile individuals. Brooke Seam, national mental health advocate. Obviously, Dr. Jerome Adams, the 20th Surgeon General of the United States, will be there. Obviously, a high-profile individuals. But I want to make it clear, the superstars of this event, the celebrities of this event, in my mind, are the four students that we have with us today. They are the superstars, the celebrities of this event. And I'm so happy to work with them on this project, and that they I invited them, but that they agreed to be part of this project. So with that said, I will flip it to them where they can do their introductions, but they are the superstars of this event.
Way to get us going, Dr. Gallagher. That was good. So we'll start with Rebecca. Rebecca, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit where you're from, a little bit of your educational background, and then why you chose social work in HBCU and Morgan State.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Rebecca Green. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. So a little bit about my education background. I received my first degree in criminal justice at Delaware State University for undergrad. And, you know, I've always grown up in HBCUs. My parents raised me at HBCUs. Both my parents went to Morgan. So HBCUs have always been in my blood, per se. So I wanted to go to Morgan, but I'm like, I wanted to, like, you know, leave Baltimore and get that independence kind of life. So after, you know, I graduated from Del State, I'm like, okay, I want to go to Morgan now and, like, you know, follow my parents that I can see. And then, I don't know, it's just the feeling that you go to a HBCU and, like, the love that you don't get anywhere else. And that your professors, like, generally care for you and they know your name. So I chose to do social work at Morgan State University because I wanted to pursue law. And because of my criminal justice background, what a lot of people don't understand is that sometimes people fall victim to their circumstances, and social work aids you with the resources and the services and teaches you how to empathize and how to be the voice for those that don't have a voice to be able to advocate for themselves. And I kind of just fell in love with it. Right now I'm interning at the Circuit Court of Baltimore City within the courthouse. And I will say, like, every day I go to my internship and I fall in love with the work that I do every day. Be able to, you know, help people tell their own stories that they're not able to articulate for themselves. Because really some people just need help. And they don't always deserve to be punished for needing help. So me wanting to pursue social work, urban social work at that, to help the voiceless be able to gain a voice and be that middleman to be able to speak up for them and just, you know, shine a little light. And I know, like, you know, in the world, a lot needs to be fixed, but I feel like a little beacon of light can change a lot. So that's basically like my motivation, my why. And I just love HBCUs. I push HBCUs on everybody that everyone should go. It's just that different type of lifestyle, the different type of love that you don't get anywhere else. And I'm very blessed for Morgan State University for blessing me with my professors that I have, my cohort, my classmates, and even like my past relationships at my undergrad. Blessing me with that family, my sorority, and all that in whole. So thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. What sorority are you a part of?
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Grace.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having us. My name's Grace Parenti. I graduated undergrad from University of California in Berkeley, with a degree in American Studies, which was pretty broad. I kind of would say I didn't really know kind of what I wanted to do when I was in college. So after undergrad, I kind of took some time off, tried to self-reflect and explore my options. And I figured out and realized, like, I've always had a passion for social justice and a fascination with mental health. So I found that social work was kind of the perfect intersection to pursue that. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I thought that that was the right path for me. So I came back to Baltimore because I'm originally from Baltimore. And honestly, I chose Morgan because I grew up right down the street. So I'm from like Northeast Baltimore. My mom still lives in that house there. So it's just like home to me, and I have such a love for Baltimore City. And I think it's very underrated, like we were talking about earlier. And I had heard just great things about Morgan's social work program. I wish I could say that, like, when I decided to go to Morgan, that I fully understood the significance of getting a social work education at an HBCU. But at the time, it was more so about just that I knew it was such a good program. But now that I am getting that education from an African American perspective, especially in a majority Black city like Baltimore, I just realized how important and valuable the opportunity has been for me. I've learned so much. And just like Rebecca said, like, the professors and the cohort is just, it is a different feel. And I can definitely attest to that, especially coming from such a big school like Berkeley, to such a small and just like more community feel. I do feel very, very supported and in all of my classes. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I really value it.
Awesome. What would you say about the difference in talent between Cal Berkeley and Morgan State?
Talent, in regards to just academics, or
The students. Do you think that HBCU students are just as talented as the ones at Cal Berkeley?
100%, 100%. I mean, I have met such smart and wonderful people in my experience at Morgan, and I think I've opened up my mind a lot more in going to Morgan. Even though I was all the way across the country in Berkeley, I just think that Morgan fosters a more like open environment for everyone to feel comfortable and safe and in talking. And I would say back when I was in undergrad, I mean, I was a lot younger back then and less experienced in that realm, but I was much less confident in speaking in class just because of the big class sizes. I felt that there was a bit of a, I don't know, not like a snobbery, but just like a different feel in the class. Like you were scared to speak unless you knew for sure you were right. But in Morgan, I do not feel that at all. Like I feel very open, and everyone's perspectives are welcomed and supported, and that is a big difference for me in my experiences.
Thanks, Grace. All right,
Thank
Jocelyn.
you.
Thanks again for having us. Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Mornelzi. I began my education at Towson University. Originally, I'm from Delaware, and so I was just ready to get out of Delaware and to go somewhere new. I never knew that I would like Baltimore City so much, which was kind of why I decided to go to Morgan. In undergrad, I studied psychology, and that's when I fell in love with mental health and the clinical aspect of psychology and social work. And so I knew that I wanted to continue my education, getting my master's, and being able to eventually become a therapist. I really want to be able to go back and be a therapist at a university because college students are just overlooked a lot of the time with their mental health. But as well at Morgan, I was afforded the opportunity to be able to work or to be able to intern with the child welfare system, which is something that I became very passionate about over the years of my education. And I really appreciate the opportunity that Morgan has given me to be able to kind of begin the work while I'm still in school, to understand the processes that are going on and to be able almost to plan like how I'm going to be effective in my career going forward.
Awesome. You know, when you're in Baltimore, when it's beginning of school, you don't I didn't realize how much of a college town Baltimore was. I didn't even realize Towson was around Baltimore than Morgan State. We were in Walmart walking around like it was just college people everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jocelyn. All right. Adebambo.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Adebambo Adeiga, and my education career began from Nigeria. So I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, and I attended Ogun State University, now called Olabisi Onabanjo University. My undergrad was in pure chemistry. I never I never knew I would end up being a social worker. So I started with chemistry. And when I moved to United States, I enjoyed the culture, the atmosphere. So I really wanted to give to the community, help the youth, and contribute to the community. So I joined the United States Army. So I am an Army veteran. So while I was in Fort Riley, Kansas, I pursued my master's in business administration because I feel that even though with the Army we are helping the community as well, even though with federal, being an active military, I really wanted to contribute to what is going on to help the children in the community. So I decided to join the HBCU. And the reason joining the HBCU is looking at their academic excellence, the competitiveness that HBCU have, and the cultural connectedness that they have with the community. So, and I joined Morgan State University because I believe this is where I can prioritize the culture and feel the need of what I actually need to satisfy my curiosity and to really help the community and the juvenile in need. So, and I really want to use my experience to make a difference in the life of others. So that is one of my major reasons why I wanted to become a social worker. And having a chemistry background with my military experience and now being a social worker, I think I have all the experiences that I need to serve the juvenile in my community and to help the juvenile in my community. And this was one of the reasons why I chose my ASP as Urban Youth, Family and Children, Urban Children, Youth and Family, to actually focus on families and children that are actually in need.
Awesome. Thank you, Adebombo. Tell me this, Adebombo. How did Lagos get so popular? Has this been happening for a long time? I've been noticing Lagos has been everywhere lately, like over the last 3 to 5 years. Has the community always been there and they decided to kind of export the culture? Or what have you seen being in America and being from Lagos and seeing how Lagos is on TV and kind of everywhere in the media right now?
Well, Lagos is called the Center of Excellence in Nigeria. That used to be the capital of Nigeria before it was moved to Abuja.
Okay.
Being the capital, that is where we have all the infrastructures, investments. So everything goes on in Lagos. That's why they call it a Center of Excellence. So Lagos is so popular because it has always been in existence right from day one. Nigeria, when they started with the state, Lagos is one of the states that was created. Now Nigeria is 36 states. Before it was 24 states. So Lagos is one of the states that was created first. So it's really, really popular because this is where you see most of our influencers, most of the people that, well, this is where they live, and everything happened in Lagos pretty much. So everything is directed to Lagos. When they talk about Nigeria, the next thing they talk about is
all right. Sounds good. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So let's go back around and talk about the work you all have done to date. I know you guys have talked about it a little bit here, but let's go a little bit deeper and talk about the work you've done, internships, and what you plan on accomplishing long term and post graduation. But first, I want to start with you, Dr. Gallagher. Along your journey, talk about just a couple of the internships, talk about a couple of the places that you've worked, and then talk about what you're thinking about doing long term. Are you going to be at Morgan State until you retire? Are you looking to build something even bigger than this? Talk about what your career goals and also your career past has been.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see following these 4 introductions why I got these 4 students, y'all together, right? With the ambition and intellect and past experiences that they have is absolutely wonderful. And, you know, one of the things that I have decided recently, I've been at Morgan State University for about 2 years now, is I've last year submitted my paperwork for promotion from associate professor to full professor, and then for tenure. And I should find out in about a month or so the answer, the outcome of that. Yeah, fingers crossed. I feel like I have a good case to achieve tenure, but we will see. So my goal is to remain at Morgan State University for the rest of my career. I was previously at Indiana University, and I loved working there. But you know, I was able to come home and be closer to my family and my daughters. And so I'm just so happy to be at Morgan State University, and especially happy to be at an HBCU. What I can tell you is, and I said this to some friends recently, if for some reason I do not earn tenure at Morgan State University, of course, I would have to start looking for another job. I do not see me ever working for a school that is not an HBCU. I have found what I see as my social work home in the HBCU community and culture. It's where I have felt most comfortable in having real, candid conversations about the role of social workers in addressing discrimination, racism, issues related specifically to urban communities. So I love the academic world. I love doing research. I love teaching, and I love sharing the great work that we do at Morgan State University. So I plan on making my career here, you know, for the next, you know, 2 or 3 decades. In regards to kind of a larger scale work, I've spent all my career addressing issues related to addiction and mental health counseling. And I really plan on staying on this path of criminal justice and juvenile justice reform, because I believe while addressing criminal and juvenile justice reform, we're going to need supports from all avenues, and we're going to need expertise from all avenues, legal avenues, policy advocates, public health experts. I believe, and in my 20 years of doing social work, that we, social workers, the 4 students here, the future of social work, we are best equipped at helping reform the juvenile and criminal justice system. And that's even evident in the title of our presentation coming up in April. The beginning of the title, the first half of it, is Juvenile Justice Through a Compassionate and Empathetic Lens. We can hold individuals accountable for their behavior. Sometimes that may even include incarceration. We can advocate for public safety within the justice system, as we should, and we can do all of that aligned with our values of our profession: empathy, compassion, brotherly, sisterly love. So my career goal is, quite frankly, I want to and plan to spend the rest of my career at Morgan State University. I love living where I live now, and I love working at the university. If for some reason it doesn't work out, I absolutely will be applying for jobs at other HBCUs, because I couldn't see me working anywhere else. In regards to my future goals, I'm going to continue staying forward and pursuing the social work mission within juvenile and criminal justice reform efforts, while also preparing students, again, such as the 4 we have here, of becoming leaders in this area, because I believe social work is the best profession, and we are best prepared to help those that get involved in the justice system.
Absolutely. Now think about FAMU too. I'm a FAMU guy, so it'll get you some warm weather if they don't give you tenure.
I like sunshine too. Yes.
All right, Rebecca. I know you touched on what you're doing in the court systems now, but talk about some of your talk a little bit deeper about what you've done there, and then some of your other experiences. And before you start that, one of my first interns was a Delta from Delaware State. So you're on mute right now, but
oh, so nice.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of you guys.
Yeah, thank you. But for me, okay, so right now I would talk about like a little bit of like what I'm doing now. So right now I am under Miss Brenda Harrell at the Circuit Court, and I'm in the medical service division. And I kind of deal with custody and visitation evaluations. So this is basically, you know, we get a case and we interview the parents or we interview the child just to see like, you know, what's going on. And then like, what's the circumstance of the situation and what parent is more like, you know, capable of having custody, or if visitation things need to be made, like changes need to be made. And then like we'll write a report and then we'll submit it to the judge, and the judge will have access to it as well as all attorneys. And then the judge will come up with the final decision. But we just give a recommendation of what we think is best for the child, because sometimes within these evaluation interviews, it can get kind of ugly because some parent might be trying to make the other parent seem there's more so like they're trying to get back at each other, and they're not really looking at the best interest of the child. So we're kind of the mediators between that. But and then I also get to dabble in a little bit of the mental health court, because medical services deal with that as well. And that is basically, you know, someone committed a crime, but at the time they weren't in the right state of mind. They can, plead. They can plead not criminally responsible. So that's very interesting. I'm really into mental health court. I got to go to district court a couple weeks ago and sit in and see how they operate their system. So I thought that was really cool. Some past internships I got to do, I was at Global Healthcare Systems, which was more like a clinical, which was more of a clinical background. So I had a caseload. I was supervised under a therapist, and she would sit in with my sessions with me. However, as I'm learning what I do like, what I don't like, I know that I don't really care for clinical work, as in therapy. I feel like the more I get my feet wet, the more I get comfortable, I might go back to that end. But I really like having a caseload where the court is my client, because in the court you don't really have clients. You kind of have that 1 or 2 sessions. Well, really just 1 session, and if you need any more information, you would just reach out to them. But basically, the court is our client. They ask us a question, and we have to figure out that question. We have to figure out the answer for them. So I really like it. I would say my long-term goal. I want to open up my own foster care for girls. But make it more of a home away from home. You see a lot of people who get into this business of foster care and they only want the money, but I don't want that. I want to be able to, have girls come into my facility, and when they leave better than they came in with. They have a sense of home. I'm not home right now, but this is my home. I have people that care about me, people who are going to show up for me, people who are going to teach me how to do my hair, how to do this, who are going to come to, my school events, who are going to advocate for me. It's a dream of mine, but it's a dream that I see coming true for me, that I feel like I'm working towards every day. But for right now, as I graduate school, as I'm getting ready to graduate in school in May, I want to get in the court system, in the law system, whether that is in the courthouse or within public defenders, like, working with them. But I'm still like, trying to figure that out. But I take it like, day by day.
Now, some of the things that you see in court, Rebecca, how do you keep those in the court? How do you not take some of those situations home with you?
I like that you asked me, because it's funny, because when I do my evaluations, I am interviewing a lot of like kids, and it's so hard because you see a kid that's 5 years old or 6, and they'll tell you all this stuff, and you catch yourself like, why do you like why are you experiencing all this and you're only 5? Like, you know, life has its challenges, and I just feel like kids don't deserve that. You should be outside playing on the playground, but I would say, like, I don't know, I have really good supervision with my supervisor, and usually sometimes after, like, we have like hard evaluations, or like we hear something that can be very heavy, because kids are like a heavy topic when it comes to like certain situations. We do a lot of self-care. We have to, like, after evaluation, you have to take a walk. Um, but my boss is really adamant on, once you clock out, you clock out. You leave it there. You don't take it home. Um, and that's just doing self-care. Kind of become trying to, like, you have to kind of train yourself to be neutral, even though that's easier said than done, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have emotions. We all have feelings, and empathy is the biggest thing. So sometimes I see kids, and I'm like, oh my goodness, my heart, like, you're adorable. Like, I would just want you for myself. But in this line of work, you have to like kind of turn off your emotions. So I just feel like with good supervision, that I have learned to keep it there, keep it at work. Um, do a lot of self-care, a lot of journaling. If I have to take a walk, take a breather, and also talk about it. Talk about it with your peers, and not your peers outside of work, but your peers who are dealing with, like, my supervisor. So we have a lot of dialogue to, like, to let out what we felt or how it made us feel. Because sometimes people will go into evaluations or these heavy caseloads or therapy sessions, and they'll consume the trauma, but they're not letting the trauma also come out after receiving that. So you have to be able to, like, find how much that you can take in your own boundaries and what your heart knows are. And sometimes it's okay as the professional to say, okay, this is a little too much for me. Like, you have to know how much you can take, because at the end of the day, like, that could be a lot.
Thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. I probably need to take more walks myself. All right, Grace, can you share some of the work that you've done, the internships, and what you plan on accomplishing long term? And then before, when you were talking, you said you took some time off between graduating to deciding what you were going to do. Can you talk through that process a little bit? What did you experience? What did you try? What did you not like? What helped you best in deciding what you wanted to do next?
Yeah, for sure. It was a tumultuous time in my life, that's for sure. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up playing sports, and so I actually went out to Berkeley to play lacrosse for their team. So once I graduated, I was a little bit lost, to be honest, because I had always just focused on lacrosse and just making it to college and to play, and so I didn't know what I wanted to do after that. I kind of was like, whoa, now what? I originally, when I was younger, kind of thought I would get into that athletic world, being a coach or something along those lines. But once I tried that immediately after graduating, I just knew that, like, that's not what was going to fulfill me in the long run. So I had to do a lot of self-reflection and just kind of finding myself in a way that separated me from that world, because I had grown up in it, and I had just kind of saw it as my way to achieve great things. And so I just kind of put myself into it fully, and then didn't really think about what was going to happen after graduating. There's not really much of a professional lacrosse world, and if so, I wasn't really interested in that. So it was a hard process, and I tried a lot of different things, from being a behavioral therapist for children with autism, to working nannying, to working at I actually worked at a massage place for a long time at the front desk. So I did like a bunch of different things, just trying to figure out what was important to me. And every time that like I did that self-reflection and all, like I said, like kind of social justice, helping people, fighting for people who can't speak for themselves, or just don't have the voice, advocacy, that stuff was always very much instilled in me by my mother. So that was like really inside of me for sure. And then on the other hand, like I said, mental health, it definitely runs, mental illness runs in my family. I've had a lot of family members suffer from mental illness. So that's always also been something that has stuck in my interests throughout my whole life. So those two things, I think. And then I had to realize that I did need to come back to Baltimore, because I was out in California during this time and I loved it. I lived in Oakland for a while, and in Berkeley, and they're like the best. I love those cities, but I didn't have that foundation of my family and kind of the connection that I have in Baltimore, all like the people I grew up with and stuff like that. So once I figured that how important that was, once I realized how important that was, it got me to think about coming back. And then coming back was thinking about what I wanted to do when I came back. And then, like I said, Morgan had always been right down the street from my house. I'd thought about social work. I found out about their program. So that was kind of my experience in that. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of self-reflection, and just just finding myself in a way that I hadn't yet in my life. So it was about 6 years. So I graduated in 2014, and I didn't come back to get my master's until 2021. So it was really a good time for me. I think I needed it, since I was so focused as a young kid, playing sports all the time, that I didn't really like find other paths, if that makes sense. And I think that's a common issue with student athletes. Once they graduate, they kind of, if they don't have that professional opportunity, or if they don't want to coach, like figuring out what is important to them other than that. So that was a big time in my life. But as of now, so I didn't have much social work experience at all when I started with the master's program in 2021. But my first year I had a clinical internship. So I was working at an outpatient mental health clinic, and that was a great experience, especially to learn a lot about mental health and that whole world. But just like Rebecca said, I kind of realized that I didn't really want to be in a clinical setting. So I kind of asked my like advisors and Morgan, if I could get a more of a macro policy level internship this year. And so I had the opportunity this year to work in City Hall in the office of Council Member Zeke Cohen. He represents the 1st District of Baltimore City, so like the Southeast. And this has been like a wonderful opportunity for me, and has opened a lot of just thoughts about what I might want to do. I've learned so much about local government that I didn't really realize before at all. And I've learned about policy creation and advocating for policies, and what it takes to, get laws to pass, and through the city council and stuff. So that's been really interesting. I've gotten to like research for policies and stuff, and then learned a lot about community development and community collaboration and advocating for communities. So I go to like local community association meetings and represent the office, and kind of just hear what the people are saying as our problems in their communities, and what they need from us, connecting them to resources, or working on applying for grants to get funding. I worked with one community association. I wrote an application for a grant to get cameras and lights put up in their neighborhood, because they have a lot of problem with illegal dumping and drugs and drug dealing and crime. So they so we wrote an application for that. So it's just been a lot of different things. But like I think that the biggest thing that I'm learning this year is that I do want to stay on that like macro path, where I'm using my social work lens to create changes on a more systemic level rather than like one-on-one individual work. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like for me. But I do know that I think like social workers should be like more in all levels of government. And I do want to pursue that in some way, but I'm currently working on what that will look like. I'm not exactly sure where I want to go, but I definitely want to keep the interest of like community and crime prevention and just making changes on a more systemic level.
I love that way of thinking. Now, what is it about Baltimore and lacrosse? It seems like lacrosse is so big in Baltimore.
It is, and it's crazy because California it was not as big, but they did have a team, and so basically like I loved sports when I was a kid. I played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse until I graduated high school. And I would say basketball is my favorite sport, but you can't tell because right now because it's virtual, but I am very short. So I kind of knew that basketball wouldn't be as clear of a path. I would have to like really try hard to find a team to recruit like 5-foot player. So then the next thing I was told was that lacrosse is huge and Baltimore players are just, they're on another level. I think that now that I'm older, it's a little more of a level playing field, but back when I was graduating high school, and then that was true. Like it was just a whole different world. Baltimore's a whole different world when it comes to lacrosse, and I don't really understand why. I think maybe it's like Hopkins. I think that has a huge influence in it, but it was just something that I knew as a kid. I was told, like, if you want to go play lacrosse, you will be able to because you're from Baltimore and you have this like leg up, basically. The other sports, it's more equal all across the country, So I utilized that in a way to be able to go somewhere far away that I probably wouldn't be able to afford if I didn't have that lacrosse background. But it's interesting that you say that because it was something that was like instilled in me since I started playing at like 10 or whatever, and it is just a weird thing. And everyone, when you came out to California, if you were from Baltimore, like the other girls were like, oh, she's from Baltimore, she knows what she's doing on the field, so it is interesting. It's very interesting.
It is. All right, Jocelyn, would you mind sharing some of your experiences to date, internships, and what your long-term plans are within social work?
Yes. Excuse me. So as my internship for the past 2 years, I've been working with Title IV-E. And so I've been able to kind of experience different units within the Department of Social Services with the state of Maryland. And so in particular, Baltimore City. And I first started in the out-of-home placement in permanency and planning, and now I'm in custody and guardianship. It's been very interesting to see the process of how foster care is really handled. I had my own idea before starting graduate school, and now just like seeing how this process really is, how it really does impact the clients that I'm working with, outside of the fact that they're not able to interact with their parents on the typical way, or how we may think of it if we're not in the foster care system. And then also dealing with being in the foster care system is a lot that they have to go through and experience, and it's making me want to really get into the clinical aspect and work with the child welfare system in some way, because I think that a lot of times people are so focused on either getting this child away from their parent or getting them back to their parent, and it's really important to also work on the trauma that they've experienced from their parents, from the child welfare system. There's a lot that I've seen that I really do want to work with when I get into the field, as well as over the summer I worked with a nonprofit that did a lot of career planning, and I really, really enjoyed that work as well. Just being able to give my students new skills, new ideas, new career paths that they may have never thought of. And I really enjoy the nonprofit work as well. So going forward, I definitely want to work in child welfare, but I also really enjoy the clinical aspect of social work. And so I know in some way I'll try to incorporate child welfare and the nonprofit work and clinical and try to figure out how to put that all together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Adebombo, would you mind sharing some? Well, you've already shared that you were in the Army and some of the different things that you shared about, Lagos and different things like that. What are your long-term goals when you look at having a background in chemistry, being an Army vet, and then using all those frames of reference into bringing it into social work? How are you going to put all that together? Because that's a unique skill set that not many people have. How are you looking at it long term?
Looking at long term, my aim is still to become a therapist in the future. And I really want to thank John Gallagher for giving us the opportunity today, and for our upcoming juvenile reform event coming up in April. So from the research that I look into in 2020, which shows that, in Maryland itself, we have African Americans that really, they account for over 72% of juvenile intake. That was in 2020. It's so disheartening when I read some of the things and some of the research and the results that the outcome of the results of what our juvenile are actually going through in the community. So my first intern in my first year was in an elementary school, and I have to deal with absenteeism and truancy. Knowing what some of these kids go through at home and not coming to school, being absent or not coming to school on time, it really bothers me a lot that, wow, they are really going through a lot. And this is what is causing some of developmental trauma in some of these children. And seeing that, I have to work with these children and their parents to make sure that they come to school. And I brought the truancy level of that school with some of the problems that this has to deal with unemployment, some family support. Me, all this really wants me to do more, and this is one of the reasons why I want to become a social worker. At the moment, I'm with Springboard Community Services in Baltimore. They deal with mental health counseling, individual family therapy, and I was opportuned to counsel a lot of people. These are hands-on training, dealing with people, knowing what people are actually going through. So when someone is talking about addiction, now me being a chemist, I can feel what they're going through in their system, that this is what they are actually going through. Rather than putting them down, I have the compassionate feelings with them to deal with them, speak with them, and to be there for them, because people really need help. And we have to help our community. So my long-term plan is to become a therapist and see what I can do for the community.
Sounds good. I like that. I like what you just said about understanding when in chemistry, when things mix, how they can have an effect on things. I think that that's an interesting and unique perspective that you'll be able to bring to the profession. Now let's talk about juvenile treatment courts. Dr. Gallagher, let's talk about behavioral disorders in children and how you treat these behaviors. Do you believe, and I know you've done a lot of research, but talk to me about what did you think when you first got into it? Was it nature or nurture? And what has your research shown you that it is?
Yeah, and that's a great question and a great topic that as a social work researcher, we're still trying to figure out, we're still exploring, is it nature or nurture? Now, certainly we can comfortably say it's both, okay? With addictions, so the disease of addiction, we have a lot more research to speak to the genetic component of it. But with behavioral disorders, and the two most common behavioral disorders that we see in young men and young women in juveniles are ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, and then also conduct disorder. We see a genetic component there, but we, I would say at a larger scale, see that nurturing component. And what I mean by that is there is a high prevalence of trauma. And I'm talking about significant physical, sexual, emotional trauma that these young men and young women experience that seems to be associated with the behavioral disorders. For example, for years when I was in Indiana, I worked at Basher Children's Home. It was a children's home, a residential home where young men and young women were either ordered there by the juvenile justice system. So instead of going to juvenile prison, they came to Basher's Children's Home for treatment, for care, or the juveniles were referred through the child welfare system. And I could safely say that 80 to 90% of the young men and young women at Basher Children's Home had significant histories of repetitive traumas occurring to them in their lives. So when we take a look at nature versus nurture, we know a lot when it comes to, say, drug addiction and the genetic component. There's still more we need to know genetically about behavioral disorders in kids, such as, ADHD, and then, as I mentioned earlier, oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. But we absolutely know there is this, environmental nurturing component, and it ties back to one primary issue, trauma. And that actually speaks to kind of the second half of the title of our presentation in April, is a paradigm shift from what's wrong with the child to what has happened to the child. And so in our presentation, one of the topics that I'll be talking about is how to best treat oppositional defiant disorder and how to best treat conduct disorder. And we'll be having a very real conversation about the problematic behaviors that are associated with these disorders. Oppositional defiant disorder, now again, this would be a very simple, basic understanding of it, but it is a consistent pattern of impulsivity. Think of it as extreme impulsivity that has a negative impact on others as well as the individual's ability to functioning, their quality of life. So extreme impulsivity, oppositional defiant disorder. Conduct disorder is on the whole other end of the spectrum. It is planned, premeditated, controlled problematic behaviors that have a significant impact on the well-being, safety, life of others, as well as the individual themselves. And so one of the examples I typically share to compare and contrast both disorders, oppositional defiant disorder is a young man in school who gets upset at the teacher, does not control his or her emotions, and impulsively picks up a chair and throws it at the teacher. It's a very problematic behavior. Conduct disorder is a young man or a young woman, the teacher, ticked me off. I'm upset at the teacher. And I'm not going to throw the chair right now. I'm going to wait until she turns around and isn't looking. And then I'm going to pick up the chair in a controlled, planned way and throw it. And in this presentation, I will be talking about those two disorders, talking about with those disorders, particularly conduct disorders, we'll be talking about real issues like rape, murder, arson, robbery, assault, very serious behaviors that we need to address through a juvenile justice lens, very serious behaviors that we may need to address through incarceration, or at least putting someone in a residential home away to protect the community. So in no way am I not supporting those methods. Sometimes incarceration is needed. Sometimes, being referred or mandated to a children's home is mandated because we're talking about very serious behaviors. But the theme, and I think Grace mentioned it earlier, is we will be approaching the treatment of these very serious behavioral disorders through a social work lens of empathy and compassion. We can hold people accountable. We can deal with some of the most serious crimes that young men and young women could do unto others, again, such as rape, murder, assault. And we can always respond to it in a kind, compassionate, social work-based method. So it will certainly produce real conversations, necessary conversations. But one thing I will say, even with these most egregious behaviors, with conduct disorder, you may see it's common for young men and young women with conduct disorders to cause harm to animals. So they may kill animals, harm animals, very serious behaviors. With good treatment, good intervention, oftentimes through the juvenile justice system, even with these very serious behaviors, recovery is absolutely possible. If they get good quality of care, good treatment, there can be healing, recovery, and change that can be done coupled with public safety. So that'll be the one issue or theme, behavioral disorders, that I will be presenting on. And Brooke Seam will be talking about antidepressant withdrawal, particularly antidepressant medications with juveniles. And then the students will be talking about, as you shared earlier, juvenile drug courts.
Nice. Now, Dr. Gallagher, I want to talk about specifically the juvenile justice class. And I want to talk to you about how you plan for, when you plan for the class, what are your goals for the entire semester? Are you going off a template, or are you going off where the world is now? Or are you going off your experience? Talk to me about that. And then let's say you hit a snag or you feel like students aren't picking up what you're putting down. How do you get back on course? But before that, I want to talk to a few of the students about what has your experience been so far with the class, and compare your expectations to what you've learned. Compare your expectations against what you've learned so far. And I know, Jocelyn, you got to hop pretty soon. Do you want to start us off and give us a little feel about what you've got out of the class so far? And let's see if Jocelyn's still here. And talk about what your expectations were before you got into the class. Jocelyn. Okay. There we go. Jocelyn's back. You're on mute, Jocelyn. Can you hear us? want to start us off, Rebecca? Maybe talk about what you've what your expectations were for the class, what your experience has been so far, and give Dr. Gallagher a little feedback, a little bit about how he can improve what he does.
So, I had pretty high expectations for the classes because this isn't my first class of Dr. Gallagher, so I knew I was going to learn a lot. The class is going really well. Last assignment we got to do a training, which is really nice. Got to learn a little bit more, and just got to open up our eyes more on, like, delinquents and how to help them, and how to help, like, juveniles, and how to help them. So I really enjoyed the class. And I'm excited for the rest of the semester and see what else more we get to, like, get out of it.
Nice. What about you, Grace? What were your expectations coming in from a pretty, like, how they say, fresh eyes are smart eyes? And because you didn't have a lot of social work background, what have your expectations been so far, just in graduate school, but in particular this class with Dr. Gallagher, because he's an orator. He's really
He truly is. He truly is. That was what I was going to start with, honestly. As you all just heard for a little, as he was describing oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder, he breaks it down so well, and he really makes it. He delivers it in a way that is just everyone can understand it, and it's applicable to the real world and to what you'll see as a practicing social worker. So I appreciate that. I've had a couple classes with him already in my experience at Morgan, so I knew, like Rebecca said, I knew that I was going to learn something and I was going to enjoy it. And also, like Rebecca said, the training, he always provides trainings for us to do as specific assignments. And I think that is very helpful because they're just very applicable to what we will be doing when we graduate. And they're helpful in both our academic and our, like, internships and stuff like that. So that I really appreciate coming from him, as well as just he always provides his own like lesson and interpretation of what we're learning, but also gives us other resources and videos and other ways to learn from other perspectives. I know we had one virtual lecture that was basically a training about different forms of juvenile justice prevention. That was, I think it was in maybe California. I actually don't remember, but it was 3 different presentations about how they have kind of focused on prevention and diversion rather than punitive measures with juveniles. And I like to hear what's going on so it's relevant to, like, what's going on around us in other states. But it's things that we can learn from and bring to Maryland and to Baltimore. So that I really appreciate as well from him.
Nice. Now, Dr. Gallagher, there are some good professors, and then, but you have people that will take you one time, and then you have other professors where people clamor to get into their class, and now we have Rebecca and Grace have had you twice. It may be, they may have had to, but from my limited perspective, I think that is because you truly, truly care. You really care about Rebecca. You truly care about Grace. You truly care about Adebombo. Where does that come from? Where does your caring come from? Is it from just your passion of the space, or is it just because of who you are?
I'm so happy to hear that. And I hope I'm not always my best self, right? And I say you can ask my mom or my daughters or my girlfriend, right? I have my own set of shortcomings, right? I'm not always my best self. But for students, right, and of course for the people in my life that I love, I sure as heck try to be. And what I mean by that is right now I'm teaching a face-to-face class Monday nights. And I start thinking about it Sunday. When I say I start thinking about the class and what I'm going to teach, but I start thinking about getting my mind right. And what I mean is I like to think, and I hope that my biggest strength as a professor is the energy and passion that I bring to the table. I have to get prepared for that. I got to sleep good Sunday night. I got to make sure Monday during the day I don't get too overwhelmed or stressed. I got to save my energy. So 5:30 at night when I show up to class, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to provide a service. So I love the work that I do. And I will say that I say this with students when we're talking about clinical social work, say counseling. So if you're counseling a client or a patient, I say, if you provide a safe, non-judgmental, confidential environment for people to receive counseling therapy, that's 80% of the equation. That's 80% of providing good quality counseling. With education, I've learned that if you provide passion and energy and enthusiasm and care for the students, that's 80%. The learning will come after it. So when I hear, and I really appreciate the kind words that I can provide that caring environment, it is because I care. And I work at it and have wonderful people in my life to help me do that. But at the same time, it is mutually beneficial. 2 weeks ago, I was teaching my Monday night in-person class. And that day I was experiencing tremendous levels of anxiety. Couldn't really explain it, but I was having a difficult day, just a difficult mental health day for me. Generally in my life, everything's okay, but I had a lot of anxiety that day. I did class. I left class, called my girlfriend on the drive home from Baltimore to Harrisburg, and I said, whew, I feel better. That's exactly what I needed. And what I needed was you all, the students. Whatever, that camaraderie, that passion we have together to help others, to address social issues, juvenile justice issues through a social work lens. So the kindness is mutually beneficial. And I witnessed it. I witness it all the time. But 2 weeks ago, I remember having a conversation with my girlfriend saying, my anxiety's gone. My mental health support, my mental health counseling session that day was teaching class with the students. Now, on a side note, I'm very passive, I think, and I'm passive intentionally, meaning with Rebecca and Grace and Jocelyn at Abambo, I've said, hey, here's what I want you talking about. Best practices in serving African Americans in the juvenile justice system. You know, what do we know about juvenile drug courts in the justice system? And go ahead and work on it. And I'm here. When you need me, reach out. I'll always support you. But go work on it. And I rely on their expertise. And again, a very passive approach. Those four minds together have this beautiful synergistic effect. It's going to produce a product come April 1,000 times better than I could ever come up with on my own. And the fact that I'm passive and they're able to use their independent thinking, not my thinking, their critical thinking, not my thinking. They're using it with support from me, but I'm very passive of, here's the topic, best practices for African-American youth in the justice system. What do we know about juvenile drug courts? Go work on it, and I'm here to help you. I think that passive nature helps promote good quality education because it's just like, say, the patients that we work with, the young men and young women who have mental health disorders or addictions. They are the experts of their own life. Our patients are the experts of their life, always, not us. Students, y'all, you're the experts of your learning and how you learn best. So I'm just so happy to hear that I do. I want to bring passion and energy to the classroom. I do want to care. and I work hard to get my mind right so I can be 100% attentive to my students. Just as I try to keep my mind right to be 100% attentive to my family and my daughters and my girlfriend. And then the last point I'll make is I typically don't have due dates for assignments. So I think students tend to like that. And when I say due dates, you'll see the syllabus. Here's the assignments, here's the due dates. But a student may say, I'm not going to make the due date. Can I have a week extension? I say, of course. Because you, the student, are the expert of your learning style and when an assignment may be completed best for you. And life happens. If you need an extension, I say, you can have an extension, no problem. Now, of course, come the end of May, I say, I need them all because I got to put your final grade in. But I'm very passive with the learning style, and I'm very passive with due dates, and very broad. I'd say, here's, do a paper on juvenile justice, and you can pick whatever topic you want, because you're the expert, not me, as long as it's remotely related to juvenile justice, and I'll support that topic. So that's kind of how I've always approached education, but it's really no different than social work. When you practice social work, the families, the juveniles, the young men, the young women, anyone we work with, they are the expert of their process of change, whether it's healing from trauma, whether it's healing from drug addiction, healing from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. They are always the expert, and we are there to learn about them, not project our values and our beliefs onto them. We're there to listen. As Grace and others have said, we're there to give them a voice and support them in their process of change. That's how I viewed education.
I'm going to get to Adebimbo and Jocelyn in 1 second, but I heard your rap, Dr. Gallagher, so I know you'll be able to feel this right here. And it's a certain ignorance that the greats have. And I think when it's all said and done, you're going to be one of the greats in the field of social work. And one of the great rappers of all time, Lil Wayne, said, you never, what, I got to remember exactly how it went. It went, you never know what you're doing till you stop doing it. Call me foolish because I do this. And that's what it is, Dr. Gallagher, because you truly do this, you don't even understand what you're bringing to the field. Where you're bringing an awful lot. You're bringing an awful lot.
Yeah, I forgot to. Yes, I rap sometimes. The students here did not hear my most recent rap, but yeah, Monday. I tell my students last Monday night to the social work addiction class, I rap. So I joke. I say my rap name's John the Phenomenon. John the Phenomenon came out of retirement. And awesome. We did an addiction recovery rap. So I'm still looking for a record deal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Adebimbo, how do you feel? Compare your expectations of the class to what the results have been for you so far. You're on mute, Adebimbo.
No, okay. Thank you. If I have to look back when I first joined the class, this wasn't where I was back then, but I've had Dr. Gallagher's class, I think about 3 different classes with him. He is so nice, compassionate, accommodating. He gave us his phone number. He shares his number in class that if you need me, even in the middle of the night, feel free to call me. If you don't get me, leave a message and I will get back. I've called him several times. He will return my call in less than 30 minutes. That's how good and how compassionate he can be. So with social work with Dr. Gallagher, I've learned to be so empathetic, to be patient, organized, and even to be more persistent. Because even anytime I have troubles, maybe with some of my clients or regarding counseling, so anytime I'm in class, I share that with him, and he will just bring it so easy that, hey, this is what you need to do. And I will be so relieved. So, and it is one of the reasons why I'm still going on in this field, and the reason why I really want to continue in the line of social work and to make impact in people's life, because he has made a difference in my own life. The way I relate with families, the way I only this in class, I emulate him, the way he handles things in an easy way. So I try to make things easy for myself rather than getting burnt out in things. I do think in my head, oh, when Dr. Gallagher talks, he talks so smooth and easy. So just take it easy on yourself. So I try to go through that part as well. So, and being in a social work, I actually am determined to actually make a difference and follow the suit of my leaders.
Dr. Gallagher, we're gonna have to change it to John the Great. Let me get Jocelyn's thoughts first about about what you've learned in the class so far, Jocelyn, and compare that to what your expectations were.
I want to say this is probably like the third class that I've taken a Dr. Gallagher. Honestly, once you find a good professor, like, you have to take all of their classes. I really enjoy. So going into the class, I already knew not knew what to expect, but I knew that I was going to learn a lot, and be exposed to a lot of information that I wasn't privy to beforehand. Through this class, especially the individualized trainings that Dr. Gallagher has us do, has helped me broaden my own information that I had, as well as make me slowly but surely continue to make me a better social worker. And something that in particular that I really like that Dr. Gallagher does is that whenever I turn in an assignment, the comments, usually your comments on your papers are like critiquing it, but even with his critiques, he also finds something positive to say, either about me as an individual or about the assignment that I did, or both, to be honest. And as much as you're turning in papers and you're doing the work in graduate school, you kind of forget, like, maybe I am doing the right thing. And having that reassurance, even if it's a little comment on a paper, it still is just like, it makes me want to keep going and continuing my education and finishing with the program.
That's awesome. John the Great, aka Dr. Gallagher. Thank you for doing what you've done. Thank you for bringing these incredible 4 students to the table. I don't know. I'm super impressed. I'm super impressed with everyone. I like how everyone's coming from a different perspective, and I appreciate you guys sharing what you learned so far and where you're at in your journey with me and with also with the audience today. Anything else anyone wants to say, please say it now, because once Dr. Gallagher, aka John the Great, goes down in history as one of the, as one of the greats, this is going to be replayed many times. So feel free to talk about anything else that you want to talk about. We'll start with you, Jocelyn, because I know you probably have to hop pretty soon.
Could you repeat your question again? I'm sorry.
If you don't have to say anything, but if there's anything else that you want to say, you can say it. You can talk about anything as far as social work, as far as HBCUs, as far as Morgan State University, as far as what you're going to do. If you want to call your shot right now and say who you're going to be, and we can look back in 20 years and look on this, just talk about anything else that you want to talk about in conclusion.
Oh, honestly, I'm just really excited. I do graduate in May as well, and I'm just really excited to get into the field. I'm excited to present as well. In April, we have a really exciting and informative presentation coming up, and it's kind of helping me get started in almost like a research aspect of my career that I want to get into as well. And so, I'm just really excited about the next few months and presenting and moving forward. And thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, thank you. Do you follow HBCU grad?
I will now.
Okay. All right. All right. Adebombo, anything else that you want to say in conclusion?
In conclusion, I want to thank Dr. Gallagher for giving us the opportunity to be here and to express ourselves. And I really want to thank everybody in the social work field, because we make an impact in the community. It's a huge sacrifice. And this is what we actually need for ourselves, to carry ourselves together and to develop our community. In 10 years from now, I really want to make an impact in my community. I want people to see the impact. I want them to feel the impact. Positive impact is what I'm talking about. And I will continue to work on that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Adebombo. Grace, is there anything that you want to say in conclusion? Talk about our conversation today. Talk about Dr. Gallagher, John the Great, or anything else?
I just want to say thanks for having us, and thank you to Dr. Gallagher for just instilling the confidence in me that I didn't have before I started this journey as a social worker. So I just want you to know how far your compassion goes. It really has helped me become the student I am now. So thank you.
All right. Rebecca, anything else that you want to say in conclusion?
I just want to first thank you for giving us this platform to come and have a good discussion. Thank you for that. And Dr. Gallagher, thank you for just giving us this opportunity and trusting us to have this big opportunity to speak on being advocates and things to, change the social work world and how we can do better within the system. So I just want to say thank you for believing us and giving us this chance. It's an honor, and that you're a great professor. Thank you for teaching us all these years. You have made my graduate experience one to remember. Thank you for also caring for us as individual students whenever we need, and giving us endless advice, and just showing us that that you believe in us and that we can do anything that we set our minds to. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Dr. Gallagher, thank you for putting everything together. Thank you for everything that you do in the world of social work. Your children are blessed to have you. I'm blessed to talk to you. Your students are blessed to have you as a professor, and Morgan State is lucky to have you. Anything that you want to say in conclusion of our talk today?
I'd be happy to end the podcast with a brief wrap, if you're okay with that.
Oh yes, I would love that.
So at first, Todd, thank you so much for giving us a voice and this avenue to share the important work that we are doing at the School of Social Work at Morgan State University. We're so grateful to be here. And, for the students, this was organic. I knew the podcast and I simply emailed you, Todd, and said, hey, here's the great work we're doing. Can we get together? And we're so grateful you said yes. So here's a wrap, and this is to Grace, Jocelyn, Adebombo, and Rebecca. Let me end the podcast this way. I want you working in our community. Queen Latifah was the first to rap about unity. UNITY, UNITY. All of you are social work superstars who have my highest recommendation. So when you apply for your dream job, following your education, put me down as a reference and I'll share my communication. Your combination of determination and HBCU representation may finally end discrimination throughout our nation.
Yes.
Ooh. Ooh. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. that was awesome, Dr. Gallagher. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the listeners. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me as HBCU grad, please reach out. And love you guys. Love you guys. Best of luck in the world and your lives and everything that you guys are going to do. I know you guys are going to make a big difference.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dr.